Welcome back to another episode of Believe in TCU. I'm Zion Trammell here with my co-host Seth Dowdle. Another TCU football episode for you all today. We might dive in a little bit of basketball as well towards the end, but we're not too thrilled to do it if we have to, if we must.
We avoid that thing as much as possible. Not because we don't like basketball, but because things are miserable.
Sometimes when things are bad, you just got to confront it. You can't always run away from it.
I
So
guess we might have to do that. We'll see.
we might. We very well could just talk about football the entire time, because today was National Signing Day. Now, a couple months ago, do you know the official date when it was?
It was December, I think.
In,
Again, here's the thing with the college football calendar, right? Like National Signing Day used to be I remember as a kid, I would like sit on my couch on, first week of February or whatever. And like we watched the guys put the hats on and announce their commitments. It was a national holiday on the college football calendar. And now that the early signing period exists, because the coaches wanted it to, by the way. So if you hear any coach complain about the early signing period, it's because they wanted it to be there. Sorry, my little soapbox. Pretty much everyone signs then. And so like nothing really changed between now and then, but TCU's class is official. Like we have all the new players that are going to be coming in from the portal to freshmen. We have them all, and we're going to talk about
it. It was a pretty average, I'd say, signing class for TCU. I mean, maybe not like they ranked 8th in the Big 12, so it's like literally right in the middle.
Yeah.
As far as where they're at, according to 247. The big one, obviously highlighted, the highest rated player on 247 Sports is Carter Buck, edge from Lake Travis. One thing to note about this signing class is that every single player comes from a school in Texas. They are the only school, I think, in the FBS to have that. TCU does. So, look, you're living right in the sweet spot of where high school football thrives. It's been, especially in DFW and all around this state, it's, the best talent comes from the state of Texas. And so I think it's good to stay in house. Why not? It's where you're able to see the most talent. It's where it's local and, stay in house.
It's definitely, I mean, it's not something that's like totally unique in terms of like, yeah, TCU getting a lot of Texas players, but every single one of them, like there's not a single one from Arizona or California or just anywhere else. So that's somewhat neat. But yeah, you mentioned it's an average class. It's ranked 49th overall. But according to 247, On3 is a bit more favorable. They have them 6th in the Big 12, and 41st nationally. But that's still, I mean, last year TCU was 26th in the country, and so that's a pretty steep drop off in terms of this year. Now, you can't. It's comparing apples to oranges, especially with a program like TCU. You have one really big recruiting class, and then maybe you don't need as big of one the next year because you're counting on development from that class to carry you forward to the next one. But it's definitely maybe an indication, especially with TCU's kind of, I wouldn't say lackluster transfer haul. They just didn't get a lot. They, compared to other schools, they kind of just filled gaps where necessary. That maybe they're taking a more kind of, calculated approach about which players they want to bring in and develop them to whatever they want to do.
It could be like a culture fit, just trying to develop a program that's consistent across the board and not bringing in players that maybe don't fit the culture that Sonny Dykes is trying to develop. Because what year is this? 4?
5
now with Sonny Dykes. Wow, that's crazy. It's flown by, but
yeah,
it really has. But now you have a background of what and an idea of what this program's going to look like, and you can start developing that a lot more clearly now. So I think Sonny Dykes kind of knows what he wants, and he knows what's hopefully in the best interest of this program. And so I totally agree with you there. It does kind of feel more like a calculated approach, especially I know we're supposed to be talking about the high school players, but especially in the transfer portal, it's a lot of guys that have a lot of experience, maybe not at the Power Four level, but they played a lot of football and they fit a need that TCU goes for. Kind of similar to maybe what Indiana's doing, maybe not to the scale of not
Yeah.
trying to compare Sonny Dykes, Kurt Signetti, obviously, but maybe a similar approach to what they're trying to do and get guys with experience. It
Hmm.
doesn't necessarily matter what level of football they're playing at.
Yeah, and I think that's admirable, and I think that could translate to the high school level as well. You'd like a guy who's played a lot, and obviously, usually, if you're in high school and you're getting signed by a D1 school, you have played a lot. But sometimes schools are known to take flyers on projects, and so we'll see what happens with TCU and with their prospects. One thing to note, like at least on paper, kind of looks like they're focusing a lot on defense, at least at the top of the recruiting class. Top two guys, according to 247, an edge and a safety. You got a corner, you got a defensive lineman in there as well. You got a couple wide receivers, and you do have a quarterback in there. You always like to have at least one quarterback coming in per class. You got Jack Dalton out of the Woodlands. He's the quarterback, 3-star signee for TCU. But a good chunk of defense, but also I think a lot of offensive linemen and wide receivers too. Like I'm looking at like 4 wide receivers here, and a couple of tight ends too. So I mean, it's kind of all scattershot across the board. But I think kind of the wideouts, what TC's looking at, and also the offensive line and the defensive side of the ball, which I know is a lot of position groups, but TCU doesn't really feel like they need to focus on perhaps some of the other ones as much.
It would be good if they really emphasized recruiting offensive and defensive linemen. I feel like that's a really tough position to address in the transfer portal. It's
Yeah.
a really good way to develop at the high school level if you're able to get guys offensive and defensive line. And I think especially offensive line is where TCU has really, really struggled. So I'm hoping with Gordy Samus, who kind of specializes in that, and there can be a bit of a changed identity, and TCU can start to identify a little better talent up front because that's that's the key to winning a successful program. I wanted to ask you though, Seth, it's obviously Texas Tech has really emerged in when it comes to NIL spending and recruiting, and they've really bulked up with building a winning program. Do you think TCU is taking notice of that and maybe not going with the same approach, but maybe something a little different? Do you think they're like kind of like feeling a little more pressure with what Tech's doing and trying to up their efforts?
It's a tough question to know without being in, the conversations between the football team, the athletic department, and the administration of the university as a whole. At Texas Tech, it's very clear that is a top-down strategy that from the university president or chancellor, whatever they have there, to the athletic director, to the board of trustees, to the head football coach, everyone is aligned in their vision and what they want the football program and the athletic department to be as a whole because they've spent a lot of money in basketball too. Um, it's hard to know for sure where TCU's head is at when it comes to investing in football at that high of a level. To answer your question about whether they're noticing, of course they're noticing. Everyone's noticing. If you and I are noticing, then they're going to notice. And they're certainly going to notice whenever they show up in Lubbock on November 28th next year and they see those body types compared to their body types. And I know it's 7 months out, but I kind of bridged a bit of a bloodbath in that one in terms of what Texas Tech could be able to do to TCU. From the outside, it doesn't look like they are doing that. I mean, they didn't really go out there and spend a lot of money on the portal or, break the bank in this last recruiting class. Now, maybe that changes heading into 26 and 27, but right now, I mean, have you heard anything about that? The only thing we've heard about athletics spending over the last couple of days is about a baseball stadium, which is great. I'd love a new baseball stadium for TCU, or at least a renovation, but that's not any conversation about a new defensive line.
It just, I think for me, it brings a little worry with that. And how much does, like, obviously, new chancellor, a lot of new faces here with TCU. How much do they prioritize building am willing to spend on a winning product in football, because I'm a little nervous about other schools. I mean, Houston is a team that burst onto the scene last year, and they just got a really highly touted quarterback prospect, and they're higher in the rankings than TCU. And Houston has just joined the Big 12 not too long ago. SMU is always going to be competitive, and Texas and Texas Tech and A&M, and I'm just worried that TCU is going to get passed up on alongside Baylor, admittedly, with where they're at as far as a desirable place to go play football at. It kind of worries me a little bit.
It is a little worrying, and maybe this conversation we're about to get to is a bit too existential for the National Signing Day conversation, but I'm willing to have it, and I'm willing to go down the rabbit hole. I'll say this on a couple of fronts. One, I think it's important, and I think of all schools, TCU should be the one to know that investing in football is good, not just for the athletic department, not just for the football team, but also for the university itself. TCU is not as big of a school as it is without Gary Patterson's 22 years of success at TCU. It does not have the boon in attendance that it has had over the past couple of years, to where it needs to build all these new dorms if it doesn't make the national championship in 2022. I say that as a fact. I know that for a fact. You think Indiana's not going to really have a lot of awesome university academic success because of their football team? They are. The University of Alabama did not have kids from Boston wanting to come to Tuscaloosa 25 years ago. But after Nick Saban went and won 7 national titles, all of a sudden you get kids from frickin' New Hampshire coming down to Tuscaloosa because they want to rush and go to sororities and whatnot. It's a whole new ball game, and it changes everything. And TCU as an institution should know that better than anyone else. They were left behind in the 90s by the Southwest Conference, and it was because their football team brought them back that the university has become such, a big deal, right? And obviously there's other aspects to that, the school itself, but the football team is a really large part of it as well. And then second, I'm not saying this as a fact, but it seems pretty clear to me that we're heading towards a world where the Big Ten and the SEC eventually maybe potentially break off and form some sort of super league of some sort. And if you're TCU, you really want a seat at that table. And the only way you're going to get a seat at that table is if you are showing that you can win consistently. You think Indiana earned a seat at the table? I think they did. Virginia Tech is going to invest a lot of money with James Franklin. They want to be at that table. Same with Texas Tech, maybe even the same with Houston. And if you're TCU, I think it behooves you to set yourself up for success in the future by investing financially in your football product.
It's the king of athletics. It drives in the most money, and so you can be good at other athletics, and that's great and all, but ultimately, especially in this state, how you play in football is the most important thing. But yeah, it's nothing against this class. I'm sure there's going to be some really important contributors to this program through this signing class. You mentioned a lot of good players defensively, with up front, cornerbacks, wide receiver. I mean, they've addressed a lot. So ultimately, I'm not super familiar with the high school game. I'm only familiar with kind of the big names in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. If you were to ask me to name notable players in Austin or Houston or whatever, San Antonio, I would not be able to do it. I'm very much new to this, so pretend like I'm an expert. But but at the end of the day, I think the way that TCU recruited this offseason or this cycle, hopefully is more calculated, if anything.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens with the recruiting class. And listen, I mean, Gary Patterson thrived off of developing 3 stars into Rose Bowls. That's kind of like what he was able to do, right? And so obviously TCU is not going to max out at a bunch of 5 stars. Heck, they've only signed 1 5-star in their program's history, and he transferred away after 2 years. Shout out Zach Evans. But you got to develop those 4 and 3 stars and do what you can. And TCU's done a pretty good job of that, even with Sonny Dykes, I'd say. And so we'll see what happens moving forward. I think it's a pretty good class. And hopefully these guys stick around and develop and become Horned Frogs for life. That's kind of the hope, right? There's obviously going to be some transferring out by some of these guys, but you hope that the ones that really stand out decide to stick around.
Yeah, you definitely would like to, and that's a big credit I will say to Sonny is that he's been able to get guys to stay. There hasn't been obviously at the quarterback position. You had Haas Haney and Josh Hoover, and you've obviously going to have guys that leave and impactful players, but for the most part, I think TCU's done a pretty good job. So whatever the case may be, whatever it is that is happening within the locker room that we don't necessarily know, or within the coaching staff or whatever, Sonny is doing something right as far as keeping guys to stay in Fort Worth. And
yeah,
obviously there's a higher ceiling now, and hopefully that TCU can reach that and be competitive in the Big 12. I'm just thinking about that Super League that you were talking about. That would be wild.
Listen, it's not a certainty that happens, but I mean, we kind of already have it right now if you think about it in a certain sense. But I do think that there could be a time when they say, why does if you're Alabama, right, and you're like, why are we giving Mississippi State the same cut out of this SEC thing as we are? What have they done for us? And so whenever it breaks off eventually, maybe not eventually, but if it ever does, and there's like a 40, 50, 60 team super league in air quotes, TCU would like to be one of those teams.
Yeah, I mean, just look at the conversations around the CFP, right? Like they're not wanting a Tulane in there anymore, and James Madison. They're not considering the people that are wanting the advocating for this want SEC or Big Ten schools. They're not saying, man, Virginia really deserved a chance there. Like I would have really liked to see Virginia get in, or hey, Houston, maybe we should have given them a chance. They're not saying that. They're wanting the LSU's, the Michigans to that didn't really, or Texas to get an opportunity to compete in the CFP even if they didn't have the best resume. So that's ultimately what they're looking out for. So just in my opinion.
In TCU, there's an avenue for TCU to join that table and become a national champion or join the national championship conversation, and it's by money whipping a bunch of guys. That's how and coaching and good coaching. That's what Texas Tech did last year. That's what they're continuing to do. And the Texas Tech experiment, for lack of a better word, I think wholeheartedly was a success. And so any hesitation from any program in approaching roster building in that regard, I feel like is foolish. Like just go for it. And I like if it busts, it busts, but like at least you tried.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Seth, we're gonna do basketball.
We are. Oh gosh. Oh no.
We're gonna do it really fast.
Oh no.
We'll start with the men's team. Nick Germonti, if you're listening to this, man, I'm sorry. I've been trying to find the light. It's just dwindling game by game. A rough loss to Colorado over the weekend, 87-61. This game was never really competitive. This was a Buffalo's team that was stumbling. I think they lost 6 in a row.
Yep.
Now, I'll give you a little bit of grace. You lost by 9 to Houston. You kept that one pretty competitive, I'd say. It is what it is. Houston's a good team. Losing to Colorado by that much there's nothing. There's nothing that you can do to justify that. That is a low point for this TCU men's basketball program this season. And hey, maybe it's good that they have the entire week off because they got to do some soul searching. What is going on here? That just cannot happen at the end of the day. I'm not trying to be over dramatic, but simply put, you just don't have wiggle room to lose by that much to Colorado if you want to make a tournament.
In like a usual Big 12, like if TCU had kind of played better in their non-conference, and I know that sounds weird because they beat the reigning national champs in Wisconsin. but they still, I think, objectively played pretty bad in the non-conference, then you would have been able to survive maybe one loss like this in conference play. But you pair this along with a loss to New Orleans, and it's like almost a non-starter to even putting them in the NCAA tournament conversation anymore. Like you can't have those two losses and feel like you should be a tournament team.
I agree. And if I'm looking at their conference losses, right? The Kansas loss, if you didn't watch the game, you thought, oh, they lost by 4 in overtime to a good Kansas team. But the way they lost was ridiculous. Blew a big lead on the road. Lose to Arizona. They're the best team in the country. It is what it is. BYU on the road, they're a good team. Utah,
Bad.
should have won that one. That's a bad loss. Houston, again, it's the Big 12 is so good. You're just going to have losses that just happen, but it is so important to take care of teams that are inferior or at the same level. And TCU has not done that except for against Baylor. Like against Baylor, they look perfectly fine. And they beat Oklahoma State. But against everybody else, they look good in stretches, or in this case against Colorado, they never looked good. So
yeah, and so now totally forgot about the Utah loss too, and you have that in there as well. You've lost to two of the bottom dwellers in the Big 12 games that you got to have, especially if you're not going to upset one of the big dogs. That could be a big resume boon. At this point, right, TCU needs to really maybe not run the table, but win a ton of their remaining games, and you got to pick off one of Iowa State or Texas Tech. You can't lose both of those games and have a tournament resume. You got to win a lot of them, and you also got to get a big tournament boost via one of those upsets.
unfortunately, TCU, you can't say anymore, well, we only lost by 4 to Michigan. It happened in November. It's surprising, sure, and it looks okay, but I believe they only have one. They only have one win over a team that's currently ranked in the top 25, and that's Florida at 17. Other than that, I don't think they have a ranked win. Like even when they played them, I don't think they were ranked.
In all
Baylor,
honesty, that Notre Dame loss is pretty bad too. At home, Notre Dame's 11-11.
yeah.
And
I thought that was played at Dickies, or was that North Texas?
That was no Texas. Notre Dame was in
Okay.
Fort Worth. I guess both are in Fort Worth, but
Yeah, I know what you meant. Yeah. So I don't know. Again, it's just it's really it's a constant theme with this TCU team getting off to bad starts. Really shot the three poorly, 5 of 23, 33% from the floor, only 8 assists. We don't really need to get into it. It's an ugly loss. Like I'm not really sure what else there is to say. So TCU's got to clean up its act ASAP, and like you said, Seth, got to beat Iowa State or Texas Tech, or maybe both of them if you really have any chance at the tournament. But
yeah.
I don't really think that should be on any TCU fans' minds right now. It
No,
should be for the women's team, but not for the men's.
Yeah, I think that when it comes to the men's March Madness, you can clear your calendar if you're a TCU fan right now.
You can. They're at home against Kansas State on Saturday. Kansas State is atrocious, and so they are actually in last place now in the Big 12, so there is zero excuse. I saw a TCU fan say that they should hire Jerome Tang.
Yeah, and I'm good.
I was like, do you see what's happening there?
He's living in 2023. He stopped watching Kansas State basketball after 2023.
Which, hey, they were fun a few years ago. Like that team,
Elite 16, right, or Elite 8? Which maybe Elite 8.
I think it was Elite 8, yeah, in 22 or 23, one of those years. They were fun. Not anymore.
Who was that short guy's name? What was his name?
Is it Marquise
Noel,
yeah, something like that. Yeah, they're fun, but Jerome Tang would not be the answer for TCU. I can guarantee you that. uh, respectfully.
A lot of drama at K-State over the last couple years, like kids getting like leaving the team. Like, yeah, I don't want it. I'm good.
I'm good. The women's team also had a tough loss. They had a ranked matchup against Texas Tech, lost by 2. They'll take on Houston today, who's also the worst in the conference. So, and at home, you'd think that they'd take care of business. But yeah, it was kind of a disappointing loss for TCU against Tech.
It was, and they did not deserve to win it. I know it was a 2-point game, but it was definitely like a game that Tech handled pretty soundly, out rebounded them. And so now TCU, I mean, like, listen, they're still in a good spot. Like, they're high up there in the conference. Maybe they're not like a guarantee and a lock to win it anymore. Obviously, they got a big game with Baylor coming up in a couple of, about a week or so. But they're still slotted in at third in the, ESPN's bracketology. They'll host like a little regional or whatever, and hopefully all ends well there. I still think they have a good shot at winning the conference and making a run of the tournament. But this team is definitely, I feel like, it just I think the Big 12 for one has kind of risen up and having a better year than it was last year, and also TCU is taking just like a minor step back in terms of consistency.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say this is the maybe not as dominant as the team that TCU saw last year, but ultimately, I think the experience that this group has, getting Maddie Shear back and healthy is important, and I think ultimately, I think they need a little more consistency from Marta Suarez and Olivia. Well, maybe not Olivia Miles, but more so Marta Suarez. And I think that TCU can be in a decent spot, but it's, to me, they're still a really good team.
Yeah.
I'm not like at all like, what's going on here? But
No, absolutely not.
it's definitely safe to say that maybe this team doesn't have the flashiness and the level of star power that they had a season ago.
Good basketball team, though. Really good basketball team. But definitely not like I don't know, not like a lock to go out there and win it all.
Yeah, I'd say that the Big 12, I do agree with you. I think the Big 12 has gotten a lot better this year. Texas Tech's obviously really good. Baylor looks to be good. West Virginia's 8-3. Oklahoma State's 7-3. So there is definitely a lot of, and TCU beat Oklahoma State. They beat West Virginia, and they'll have 2 games with Baylor. So they've played well. They haven't played a bad game this year, really. I don't like all around, like, oof, it was ugly. Even though Texas Tech looked better than them for the most part, they still only lost by 2. They lost by 2 to Ohio State, and then they lost by 10 in overtime to Utah.
And the difference in and especially in that Ohio State game, right? They turned it over like 20 times. Like, if you take away 5 of those turnovers, TCU probably wins the game.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's just kind of really small things right now that TCU just needs to clean it up a bit, and that they would have picked up 2 more wins probably.
I think it's definitely important for this team to improve a little bit in late game situations. And, again, turnovers have definitely become an issue, but
Maybe
I
them
think
and the men can have a powwow about late game situations. Just have a
that would be good.
big sit down meeting about how we need to fix this.
That'd be good. That'd be a productive conversation for sure. But again, TCU taking on Houston tonight as we're recording this on Wednesday, so should be an easy win over a bad Houston team, and then they'll hit the road to take on Colorado on Sunday. They're playing on. Wow, who scheduled that? That's like right before the Super Bowl, I guess.
Hey, a little precursor to the Super Bowl. Watch TCU play Colorado.
They should have played on Saturday. That's interesting that they're playing on Sunday, but hey, we didn't make the schedule. So.
Nope, we did not.
All right, well, that will finish things up here for this episode, talking TCU football with the National Signing Day, and then, of course, a little conversation there around TCU basketball. You can subscribe to our YouTube page or listen to us wherever you get your podcasts, all at Believe in TCU. So for Seth Dowdle, I'm Zion Trammell. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you guys next time. And as always, go Frogs.